All right, let's just jump right in. Welcome to today's Explainer. If you're the kind of focused learner who absolutely loves dissecting how massive global events are put together, well, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're unpacking the 2026 FIFA World Cup. And let me tell you, this specific tournament is literally rewriting the rulebook for international sports. We're going to break down the logistics, the history, the format changes, and oh yeah, some incredibly surprising anomalies we found hiding right in the source material. So let's get into it. The absolute ultimate hook for understanding the 2026 tournament. It really comes down to just one single number: 48. For the first time ever, FIFA is expanding the World Cup from its traditional 32-team format to a completely unprecedented 48 teams. And this one structural change, it ripples out and alters absolutely everything about the tournament's scale. I mean, from the sheer number of matches to the literal concrete infrastructure required to host the whole shebang.
Section 1. The biggest World Cup.
So the organizers didn't just want to host another tournament. They genuinely set out to create the biggest World Cup in history. And to pull that off, they had to make some pretty massive adjustments. The most crucial point right off the bat is the scheduling. We're seeing a major shift back to tradition here. You probably remember that the previous 2022 World Cup in Qatar was actually played in November and December, right? That was to avoid the extreme summer heat. But 2026 is shifting right back to that familiar Northern Hemisphere summer window. Our sources indicate the tournament will run from June 11th straight through to July 19th. It's a complete return to the classic summer football festival that fans all over the world are used to.
Now, take a look at this incredibly specific number provided in the source data. 6,081,966. That is the projected attendance figure. And what's really amazing here is that, if true, this would completely shatter the all-time attendance record. That record was actually set way back in 1994, the last time the United States hosted. It really just goes to show how supersizing the tournament also totally supersizes the expected crowd.
Section 2. 3 co-hosts.
Obviously, housing millions upon millions of fans requires a logistical marvel. And that unprecedented geographical spread means they're splitting the tournament across 3 completely separate nations. The joint bid between the US, Mexico, and Canada actually ended up beating out Morocco for the hosting rights. But, it's not exactly an even split. The United States is definitely taking the lion's share here. They're set to host 60 matches across 11 different cities. And more importantly, the US will actually host every single game from the quarterfinals onward. Meanwhile, Mexico gets 10 matches in 3 cities, and Canada gets 10 matches in 2 cities.
So, what does this mean historically? Well, particularly for Mexico, this joint bid makes history. They hosted their first World Cup back in 1970, their second in 1986, and now, with 2026, they officially become the very first nation in the history of the sport to host World Cup matches 3 separate times. Honestly, that is an incredible legacy for Mexican football.
Just to quickly round out the context for our host here, the United States is hosting for the second time, obviously having previously hosted in '94. Canada, on the other hand, is making its absolute debut as a World Cup host. Oh, and just to remind everyone of the competitive landscape entering this super expanded tournament, Argentina will be returning as the defending champions after taking the cup in 2022.
Section 3. The new 48-team format.
Okay, so we know where it's happening and who's hosting, but how did we actually get to this supersized format? Well, it didn't just happen overnight. If we walk through the chronology from our source, it really started back in January 2015. That's when Michel Platini first proposed expanding to 40 teams. The idea kind of spread, and by March 2016, current FIFA president Gianni Infantino publicly agreed with the idea of expansion. Finally, on January 10, 2017, the FIFA Council held a vote, and they actually unanimously voted to bypass the 40-team idea completely and jump all the way to a 48-team reality.
But as you can imagine, you can't just throw 48 teams onto a pitch and say, go. FIFA had to figure out how to mathematically organize this whole thing. Back in October 2016, they heavily debated 4 distinct options. They looked at 2 40-team models, one with 8 groups of 5 and another with 10 groups of 4. Then they weighed 2 48-team models. One of those involved a massive 32-team initial playoff, and the other utilized 16 groups of 3 teams.
So the crucial takeaway here is what they actually chose. The winning format was the 16 groups of 3 teams, and this completely flips the group stage dynamic we're all so used to. From those 16 groups, the top 2 teams will advance, creating this totally unprecedented 32-team knockout round. Once you hit that elimination phase, it's essentially a massive tournament within a tournament.
Now, what's the primary benefit of all this massive expansion? Well, it's giving new nations a chance on the global stage. Our source text specifically calls out 4 nations that are set to make their World Cup debut thanks to this expanded format. We're talking Cape Verde, Curaçao, Jordan, and Uzbekistan. This is an absolutely huge moment for those federations, and of course their fans.
However, scaling up this fast definitely leads to some fascinating logistical confusion. And we actually found some right inside our own source material. I literally have to point this out because it's just brilliant. If you read the main text of the article we're looking at, it firmly states the tournament will consist of 80 matches played over 32 days, which perfectly checks out if you add up the 60 US games, 10 Mexican games, and 10 Canadian games. But if you look at the source's data info box, it claims there will be 104 matches. It really just highlights how incredibly complex the math and logistics of a 48-team expansion really are, when even the documentation is getting tangled up.
Section 4. Future Facts from Wikipedia?
Now, speaking of the source's data, this brings us to the absolute most bizarre and honestly entertaining anomaly we found during our research. We are somehow dealing with highly detailed statistics for a tournament that hasn't actually happened yet. It begs the ultimate question, doesn't it? Who will win the 2026 World Cup? Well, if you thought you had to wait until July 2026, our source material apparently already has the answers. We are simply here to report exactly what the data says.
According to this highly anomalous info box, the results are already in, folks. The source explicitly lists Spain as the ultimate champion, claiming their second World Cup title. They apparently defeat the defending champions, Argentina, who take the runner-up spot. Coming in third place is England, with France rounding out the top 4 in fourth place. Wild, right?
But wait, it actually doesn't stop there. The speculative data explores the individual awards with just stunning precision. Our sources already crowned France's Kylian Mbappe as the top scorer with exactly 10 goals. Meanwhile, Spain apparently sweeps the rest of the board. Rodri takes Best Player, Unai Simon takes Best Goalkeeper, and Pau Cubarsí wins Best Young Player. Oh, and the Netherlands wins the Fair Play Award. It is just a wildly detailed set of speculative data living right there in the source text. Clearly, someone had a bit of fun editing that page.
Anomalies and internet edits aside, the reality of 2026 is rapidly approaching. And it leaves us with this final thought to consider. Is a 48-team, 3-country World Cup a huge win that brings the beautiful game to more global fans than ever before? Or, when it comes to the sheer logistics, scheduling, and tournament formats, is bigger not always better? It's a fascinating question, and one we are all going to see answered on the pitch. Thanks for joining me for this explainer to break down this incredible source material, and keep on learning.